The Vikings were a Norse people, who originated from Scandinavia, modern-day Norway, Sweden and Denmark. They were fierce warriors and great explorers. The Viking Age lasted from 800 to 1150, they conquered England and Ireland, and traveled great distances mainly by sea, as far as North America, and the Constantinople and Baghdad to south. Over 3 centuries, they leave their mark as pirates, explorers, raiders, settlers on much of England, Russia, Iceland, Greenland and Newfoundland, modern-day Canada. Although Viking raids began in 750 AD, but historians marked 793 AD, an attack on the Lindisfarne Monastery in England, as the beginning of Viking Age. The name Viking comes from the Old Norse word vik, which means Scandinavian pirate or raider. They spoke Old Norse, and made inscriptions in runes. For most of the period, they followed the Old Norse religion, but later became Christians. Vikings were also farmers, fishermen, craftsmen and traders. Many theories were put forward for the cause of Viking invasions. They were drawn by the growth of wealthy towns and monasteries overseas, and weak kingdoms. Scandinavia experienced population growth just before the Viking Age began. The agricultural capacity of the land was not enough to keep up with the increasing population. The Norse mythology influenced the Viking people, and encouraged their raids, because Viking lifestyle followed that of the gods. Vikings believed, fearsome and brave warriors who died in the battle, was the gateway to the glorious afterlife called Valhalla. The sea was the easiest way of communication, between the Scandinavian kingdoms and the outside world. So Viking people began to build ships of war, and send them on raiding expeditions, and initial raids targeted the monasteries, which started the Viking Age. In the late 8th century, Britain was divided into separate and independent kingdoms, East Anglia, Wessex, Northumbria and Mercia, the last of which was the strongest military power. In the British Isles, monasteries had often been positioned on small islands and in other remote coastal areas, so that monks can devote themselves to worship without the interference, so it made them isolated and unprotected targets for attack. The first known account of a Viking raid in Anglo-Saxon England comes from 789, when 3 ships from Hordaland landed in the Isle of Portland, on the southern coast of Wessex. They were mistaken as merchants by a royal official, and asked to come to the king's estate to pay a tax on the goods. They murdered the officials. In the year 793 AD, a small Viking fleet set off across the North Sea, to a small and remote holy island of the Lindisfarne, located off the east coast of United Kingdom. That was the day the Vikings attacked the monastery at Lindisfarne. The incursion was on a large scale, and of a nature that shocked the entire world. The attack on Lindisfarne had far-reaching effects, because it was considered an assault on Christianity. News of this invasion traveled all around Europe. The monastery of Lindisfarne was highly prized, because it was the very place from which Christianity had been re-established in the north of England. Vikings arrived during the stormy weather at the Lindisfarne, and the monks in the monastery was taken by surprise. Vikings attacked the monastery, killing and enslaving many of the monks. It was the first time the Vikings had attacked a monastic site in Britain. Vikings devastated the church by looting, slaughtering, shedding the blood of saints, and killing the innocent people around the church. It would have been considered dishonorable for a Norse warrior to kill unarmed civilians, and take their possessions, but this precisely what the Vikings did. They were able to do so because those they plundered were Christians, and so the rules which maintained by Scandinavian society did not apply to them. The attack on Lindisfarne was only the beginning, and considered the start of the Viking Age. It was the major impact upon the Christian world. Viking raids increased in Britain, and eventually entire Viking armies landed in Britain, conquering parts of the country. In 865 AD, the Great Heathen Army invaded England, aiming to occupy and conquer the 4 kingdoms of East Anglia, Northumbria, Mercia and Wessex. From 800 to 11th century, a vast number of Scandinavians left their homelands to seek their fortune, and raid on Lindisfarne laid the foundation and beginning of the Viking Age.